President, please be seated. The court is now in session. As scheduled, this morning the floor will be given again to the prosecution so that they can resume their questioning to the witness Salot Ban. The prosecution, you may proceed.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Good morning, distinguished colleagues. Yesterday, we were looking at D267/5.1.125, and yesterday, the President asked the witness to take a while to look at that document. That's where we left off. So I'd like to begin this morning by asking the witness if he has had an opportunity to look at the document and whether he remembers the document from the days when the co-investigating judges were asking him questions.
Response. When I was interviewed by the investigator, I did not see this document. I only saw the document in this courtroom.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, before a decision is taken on this document, it seems that the witness does not remember this document, but if you look at document 369/36, it does seem relatively clear, and I would like to display once again the page that has the two relevant questions on it. I do believe, in fact, that the court officer has already taken steps to show the relevant pages to the witness.
Mr. President, perhaps the gentleman could inform us which pages they are so we can also look for them.
oui, effectivement, mais ce sont les...
Yes, of course. I'm talking about questions and answers 61 and 62 in document D369/36. I think it's easier to refer to the numbers of the questions than the ERN numbers. It's clearer. So question 61. Regarding this live view meeting, we would like to refer to document D267/5/1.1.25, ERN 00427859, in which Comrade Sim's life view was mentioned. Who was Sim? And then the answer, Sim was a cook who was under my supervision. Currently he lives in Simri province. And then, straight after that, you have question 62. And it says, do you recognize whose writing is in this document? Answer. 62. No, I do not. Then there are other questions which relate directly to the same document. I can give the ERN numbers. Question 62 talks about 7 different sections in B1. And so the answer, no, I do not, to answer 62 is completely clear. I can ask the witness again. Do you recognize whose writing it is in this document? The answer is perfectly clear. When you are shown documents with handwriting, do you, witness, know the handwriting in the document?
Pardon, et je précise, écrit à la main.
Hand written, I specify.
Response. Your question is whether I saw that document, and my response was that I did not see the document then. I only see the document here in this court. When I was shown a document, it was not this part of a document. It was just a piece or 2 pages of document. And I did not put a thumbprint on that piece or 2 pages of document. And now you show me this new document, which I did not see before. So how can I say I see this document?
Peut-être pourrez-vous nous dire si les 2 pages que vous avez montrées.
Perhaps you could tell us if the 2 pages that we showed you resemble the ones that are in the document that is before you today.
Response. From my recollection, at that time, the documents that were shown to me was not in this format. And of course, I did not have any thumbprint acknowledging that I saw that document then.
Monsieur le Président,
before continuing to question the witness, Mr. President, perhaps I could have your authorization to develop this question a little bit and refer not only to what I raised yesterday, but draw on the entire list of questions that are related to this document. It's not only to D36936, there is also D233/9, and I see another reason to submit this document to the witness, because the questions have been put to him, the documents have been shown to him, because in D233/9, he, in that respect, did recognize his own name and Van's name at an introspection meeting that he participated in, and that self-examination meeting was a part of the document that is before him today. It's between 10 and 20 pages, and it's about one of those self-examination meetings. Now, I don't know if I have the authorization of the Presidency to go further with this particular demonstration, or if at this juncture you are ready to take a decision on that question. Thank you.
President, Defense Counsel Michael Canavas, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps before we go any further, there may be a few questions for precision's sake. Obviously, if you look at the document D369/36, which the gentleman has pointed to, there is clear indication that something was shown to him. and where he does indicate that he does not recognize the writing. The question then that needs to be posed is whether subsequently, where they make reference to pages, whether those pages were actually shown to the witness or whether they merely indicated to him that in this document, this is what is being told to you. Now, I raise this because obviously it may be a question of credibility. I'm not suggesting that the gentleman, the prosecution that is, cannot go into asking the questions where pages, specific pages were referenced in the interview. But perhaps the confusion may lie in that the document itself was not provided. And why do I say that? Because I see that at least one judge has this look of perplexion. Because if you look at the 5 documents, the 5 interviews, you will see often the investigators are saying, what if I were to tell you that there is a document with never showing the document? What if I were to say that a witness says such and such without naming the witness or the statement? So this may be an indication where they did show him the document initially. He said he didn't recognize it. They then proceeded in asking questions, noting which pages, but not necessarily allowing the gentleman to review the document itself, either in whole or in part. I think that's where the confusion may lie. So one technical question, whether he was provided the document itself or pages of the documents on each question that was posed. As I've indicated, I have no objections to questions being asked from pages that were referenced. As far as the earlier one, D233/9, I'm unable to follow the train of thought that the prosecution has alluded to. He's talking about a particular document. I don't know which document he's referring to. I suspect that we're going to go step by step. He's going to be able to identify the document that was actually shown to the witness, and we'll see what happens. But I think one technical matter just needs to be clarified, and then the prosecutor should be entitled to go into the pages that were referenced in this particular document. Thank you.
President, thank you, Defense Counsel. Lead co-lawyer for civil party, you may proceed.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning to the bench and to everybody in the courtroom. I'd like to make 2 comments on the problem, which does seem rather worrying about document production. The first point is connected with this particular document and what the co-prosecutor said. In the document 369/36, question 61 refers to a document, and then straight away after that there is question 62 about handwriting. So it is rather hard to assume it could be anything other than the writing of that particular handwritten document. There are different ways of establishing whether a witness has seen a document. There is what he says, and then if his memory is faulty, there are objective proofs. And I think the succession of questions here gives ample proof that he has seen the document. That is my first point. My second point is that your chamber has taken a decision on the production of documents which is cause for concern, because the debate here in this chamber provides a way to establish the truth in this particular file, and during the debate we have made use of testimonial proof and documentary proof, and it seems to me that we cannot disassociate testimonial witness proof from documentary proof, and it's very interesting in all instances to be able to debate documents at the same time as questioning a witness. And I am wondering why it is not possible to discuss documents in front of a witness solely because the witness says he has not seen the document. I think you can show a document to a witness. It doesn't mean that the witness has to draw assumptions from it. The witness can look at a document that is a piece of evidence on one side and then ask the witness what he knows, and then cross-relate the 2 forms of evidence. But saying that a document cannot be discussed or shown to the witness simply because the witness states that he is unaware of it, I think that we are depriving ourselves of a certain form of evidence, and that is a great pity. Thank you.
President, yes, you may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The President, the National Defense Council for Nuon Chea, you may proceed. The prosecution, please hold. Sonoron. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. My apology, I forget to switch my phone off. The witness clearly stated that he does not recognize this document, and both the prosecution and the lead co-lawyer shall not compel this witness to acknowledge his recognition of this document. If a witness already states that he does not recognize the document, then the chamber shall decide to withdraw that document from the proceeding. Thank you. President, the practical issue before us is rather distinct from what we have practiced so far. In regards to the documents to be shown to the witness and the new document that is proposed to the witness, whether the witness knows or has seen or recognizes such a document before he is summoned to testify before this chamber. If the witness clearly states that he does not recognize or has never seen such a document, then the chamber will decide to withdraw that document either in the hard copy form or the electronic form from the screen. However, this particular document is different from that category. The prosecution intends to rely on this document by referencing to document D369/36, which is a written record of the interview by the investigator of the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges in relation to the indication of making a presentation of this document before this witness. It is likely that at that time there is sufficient reason to believe that the document was shown to this document by the investigator during the interview, which have been transcribed into this written record of the interview. And there are 4 portions of this document which reference to this particular document, that is in reference to document D267/5/1.1.25. The issue before us is that whether this whole bunch of document which is considered to be a record obtained from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs then, was shown in full to this witness during that interview, or maybe only 1 or 2 pages of that bunch of document was shown. So there are 2 possibilities here, whether the whole bunch of the document was shown or 1 or 2 pages of extracts from the whole bunch was shown to this witness. This is what we need to clarify. And if not, then we may just need to proceed. This is not the only thing that we need to base on. Because so far we relied on what has been recorded in those interviews. The question doesn't stop whether he has seen this document or not. So the solution to this matter has to be clear. The prosecution, you can once again ask additional question to the witness regarding the fact whether the witness knows that the whole bunch of documents was shown to him. If not, you need to specify which page of this whole bunch of documents were shown to this witness. You need to specify which page that he was shown during that interview so that the witness can respond to your question. And then the chamber will decide. We shall then decide if this matter cannot be resolved, then we have just to proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais essayer de...
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll try and be as clear as I can. I'm going to base myself on document D369/36. Question 52 refers to ERN in Khmer 00427826. It was a question that was about the governing committee of the Foreign Ministry. In English, it's pages 00003250-251. There's no French translation for the extract of the document. D267/5/1.1.25. In the same document in question 53, it says the same thing. The same goes for question 54, which is a follow-up question. As to question 55, there is no ERN page mentioned, but there is reference to a category of persons considered to be incorrigible, and you find those terms on pages 00427825 in Khmer, in French 00657829, and in English 00003249. On question 56, it's very clear in the title of question. There's reference to a Congress of the 18th of July, 1976. And there's a whole section of document D 267/5/1, point 1.25, which concerns that particular Congress under a very clear title, Congress or General Assembly. B1 Ministry Assemblies, 10th of July 1976, and there's a whole section about that assembly which refers to pages 0042, 78 to 28 in Khmer until 0042, 78, 57. That's almost 30 pages talking about that Congress. In English, 4 zeros, 3251 to 3272. In French, it's rather harder to determine. It starts at 00.
The President, the prosecution, for the record, could you slow down? In particular, when you speak on the ER numbers of the document, you request for additional time, so please use your time effectively. So please repeat the ER numbers of the last few pages. The interpreter could not catch it.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry about that. The pages concerning the Congress that was held on the 10th of July 1976 in Khmer are 0042, 7828 to 0042, 7857. In English, 00003251 to 3272. And in French, 00657831. Now in French, the pages are not in the correct order. In question 56, there is a reference to traitors and the control of biographies among the staff, and the pages are very precise there. In Khmer, 0042, 7844. Within the 30 pages I mentioned just now. In English, 00003262. And in French, 0065 7991. I quoted just now questions 61 and 62. In 61, there is a specific reference to the Khmer page, which is 0042 7859, which in English corresponds to 000032 72 to 73, and in French 0065 79 84. Question 62 is the one that refers to the recognition of the writing that was shown to the witness. On question 63, it says, according to the document, B1 work was classified into 7 sections: education, growing crops, the office, politics, protocol, the secretariat, and civil aviation. And each of those different 7 sections can be found in the document that I have submitted, 0042 7849 in Khmer, English 00003267, and in French 0065 79 89. On question 65, in the question itself, there is an actual reference in Khmer to 0042 7849. There's a mistake in the transcription. here, because in fact it shouldn't say 7849, it should say 7949.
En anglais, c'est la page.
In English it's 0003436 and there's no French translation. Here we're talking about staff in Chamade in question 67, and here again you have the page references in Khmer 0042 7928, in French 0065 78 91, and in English 00003321.
Alors, pour la question 68, il s'agit.
Regarding question number 68, it is practically the same page and continues on the next page. As for question 70, they are talking about enemies and recalcitrants sent to the security center. The contents are similar to those on page Khmer 0042 7941 under heading number 1 regarding types of disputes and antagonism, and in English quadruple 4 33 31. And I'll now talk about another document, D 263/9. And a question was put to the witness, and you would understand that they were talking about a self-examination, self-criticism meeting. I will have to read some extracts. The references are not mentioned in the two questions in this document, but when you read them, you would understand that it is indeed part of the document that was shown to the witness. That is 265, which talks about self-criticism. And this section is from pages 0042 7907 in Khmer up to 0042 79 27. We are talking about 20 pages. In English, it is quadruple 4 3304 up to 3320, and in French, it is 0065 7875. But the pages are mixed up, so it is difficult to give all the ERN numbers. Perhaps the most interesting passage is answer 1, and the witness says, I think that this document truly refers to a meeting held at the Foreign Ministry. There is a detail which confirms what I asserted, and it is the name of Comrade Pong, and the translation is not very good because it says, giving me advice. The English is clearer. We understand that it's Comrade Van who gives advice to Comrade Von, and the witness in this says that he really existed. This document refers to a meeting that was held between 1975 and 1978, because during that period there were minutes of all meetings held. Now, when you look at that, along with the passage I have just mentioned in the documents shown to the witness, that is the 20 pages regarding the self-criticism meeting, you would understand that indeed the name of Comrade Van and Von appear, and that Comrade Von and other comrades such as Kim and so on and so forth criticize themselves, and then Comrade Van draws conclusions or gives advice. I believe that the answer given by the witness in answer 1 is truly clear, because he says that I think that this document truly refers to a meeting that was held at the Foreign Ministry. I do not think that he was not shown this document. I believe he was shown this document because he himself says that his name appears in the document. This is what I would say in this regard. And last point, in his answer to question number 2, in document 233/2, and the question was, who is the person who wrote the minutes with his hand? And he says, according to me, the person who could have written the minutes could be Sun Sekun, or Mr. Im Sopip, or Mr. Ban Kip Chun as well. I do not think either that regarding this section he could have given names without having looked at the document or the writing, or the handwriting on it. So these are sections and pages that I think should be shown to, must have been shown to the witness during the various interviews. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And why don't you ask the question more specifically about the document? Can you ask the witness regarding the documents that you have just described? Going back to the investigation phase, during which the investigators made reference to those documents, whether he, the witness, still remember those documents.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Witness, regarding the meeting on self-criticism in which the names of comrades Von, Van and Chim appear, do you remember whether the investigators showed you that document?
Response. Allow me to answer this question again. Initially, you asked whether I have seen this document before, and I answered that this bunch of documents, no, I never saw this bunch of documents. I only saw this document here and now. Only a few pages were given by the investigators to me, and those few pages I was asked whether I recognized the writings of the documents, and I said no. The last document provided to me by the investigators were of only a few pages, and I said no, I did not know about the documents. Now I am presented with a different document. I did not even thumbprint the few pages of documents that I was provided by the investigators. That's why I did not answer your question. Otherwise, I would be then put other questions. If I did not see the question, the document before, how could I answer the questions?
Je vais encore essayer une question, Monsieur.
Mr. President, I will try another question. I would like to ask the witness to tell us whether a section of this document may have been shown to you, since it appears that in the record of the interview you recognize the name of Comrade Ron, Van, and Chim as they appear on the document. Perhaps you should look at Khmer page 0042, 79, 14, which is one of the pages dealing with that self-criticism meeting. And tell me whether you saw that document.
Could we have the corresponding numbers for the rest of us who may wish to follow these proceedings?
Pardon.
I'm sorry, in English it's 444-3310, and in French 0065 7950.
Mr. President, I'm talking about the document itself that they're showing him. Now, are they showing the gentleman his statement, or are they showing him a page from the document which they are attempting to introduce? I don't know what's going on here. Because in the statement of 233/9, and I note there was a European investigator at the time, it says, I will show you this document, and there's no number to the document. There's no page reference to the document. So what is being shown to the witness so the rest of us can follow along? Which calls into question, the quality of the investigation, never mentioning what the document is.
The President. Thank you, Mr. Michael Canavas. International Co-Prosecutor, could you identify the documents? The specific pages in either 2 or 3 languages. Just like what we did before. This is a general principle, and everyone is to follow this principle. Parties choose different languages, Khmer, English or French. So this is a normal practice, and parties should remember what they are supposed to do.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, Mr. President. The Khmer page that I wanted to show to the witness, whose reference I've given, is indeed a passage titled Comments by Comrade Von, and in English it is quadruple 03310, and it goes from 33:9 to 33:10. In Khmer, the pages that follow, if you flip over the page, witness, have a title on page 0042 7914, in English quadruple 4 3310, and in French 0065 7950. The title on this page is Comments by Comrade Van to assist Comrade Von. Perhaps I should clarify something in French because it's rather complicated. The comments of Comrade Von are on page 0055 7881, and the comments by Comrade Van are on page 0065 657950. What I would like you to say, witness, is this regarding these particular pages. Were you shown those pages by the investigators during your interview? Since you say that you recognize certain names, would this document have been shown to you?
Response. This document was not presented to me back then. I only come to know these documents now. Besides, I only recognize my name, and this document was not written by me. The title of this page reads, concerns comments of Comrade Hong. I reject the contents of this document, and I did not thumbprint this document.
Monsieur le Président, j'ai l'impression de...
Mr. President, I think we are going round in circles. I am in the Chamber's hands regarding this decision, since we are losing time and I'd want to move into another line of questioning. Thank you.
The President. Can witness examine these 4 documents? Court officer is instructed to take these documents to witness and ask him to have a look at these documents in this order. The President. Witness. Do you still remember whether you have seen the 4 documents that you have been provided just now? Whether you were presented with these documents during the investigation phase, particularly during your interview with the investigator? Response. During my interview, I was given a few pages of documents, but as I have seen this document, those pages were not the same as these documents. This is from my recollection. That is why I said I do not know the writings of these documents. This is my answer. The President. Thank you. You did say clearly in your written record of interview before the investigators, that is in document Z369/36, you indicated that you did not recognize the author of the document. You did indicate that. However, there are questions in that document which referred to the 4 documents that I gave to you. The investigator made reference to these documents. For example, according to document D267 1.1.25 and refers to a particular page with EIN number, and the question made reference to a number of names and asked whether you confirmed with that. And you said something to that. So this is for you to consider. That is for you to consider 2 points. Now, the investigator, based on a number of documents, to ask you some questions. The investigator referred only to 4 particular pages. In asking you questions. That refers to the 4 documents that I provided to you. Can you confirm whether this is the case? Response. I would like to say that the documents that were presented during the interview were not these 4 documents. From my memory, I can say that there was my name in the document, but I was not allowed to read the contents of the document back then, so I could not guarantee whether the content of the document was accurate. So if you ask me to ensure that these are the documents I were presented back then, I am afraid that I cannot do so, because I was not allowed to thumbprint in order to acknowledge the contents of the document. Because I did not know about the content of the document. If something wrong with the content, and then the President interrupts. There may be misunderstanding. The reason why the Chamber provides you these documents is not to prove that these documents were written by you. We would like to know whether you were presented by investigators during your interview. This does not mean that you are going to be responsible for the contents mentioned in these documents, because these documents were not written by you. And if you did write these documents, the Chamber will not ask you to be responsible for the contents of these documents. Court officer is now instructed to take back the 4 documents from witness. Now the Chamber would like to inform the prosecution that this witness does not remember about these documents. However, on the basis of the questions asked by the investigators, as referred to in the documents you did before, the co-prosecutor may continue questioning this witness. Using general questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Witness, yesterday you stated that during meetings at B1 that those meetings did not bring together intellectuals on the one hand and persons who were under your responsibility in the production unit and who hailed from the peasant class. That notwithstanding, did you attend assemblies and congresses organized at the ministry under the auspices of the chairmanship of Mr. Ingsari?
Yes, I did.
Pouvez-vous nous dire, par rapport à ces assemblées,
Regarding those assemblies, can you tell us who was present? Were all cadres and staff members at the ministry and B1 in attendance, or which category of persons were in attendance?
I do not remember all. Sometimes I was to travel abroad. I do not remember about this all. But in practice, all the office committees participated in the meeting.
merci.
Thank you. Do you recall a General Assembly held in July 1976?
Chaque fois qu'il y avait une assemblée générale,
Whenever there was a General Assembly, how many days could it last?
The assembly was conducted on the basis of the practical situations. Sometimes we determined initially that it was to be last half a month, but in practice it lasts only a week. So the situations changed.
vous avez parfois voyagé, vous avez dit, mais
You stated that at times you traveled. How many General Assemblies did you attend at the Foreign Ministry between January 1975, between April 1975 and January 1979? I beg your pardon.
I did not understand the question. Can I have the question again?
oui, je voulais savoir.
Yes. I wanted to know how many General Assembly meetings and congresses you attended at the ministry between April 1975 and January 1979. Although you stated that there were times when you were not in the country, can you give us approximately the number of General Assemblies that were held at the ministry chaired by Ieng Sari during that period?
Response. It was about 2 times. I believe it was less than 3.
Est-ce que vers le mois de juillet 76,
Around July 1976, was there a wave of arrests at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
Response. I cannot recall the date, but yes, there were arrests.
vous souvenez-vous des motifs de ces arrestations?
Can you remember the reasons for the arrests? In response 57 of the record You said that these arrests were widespread. I'd like your permission to show answer 57 of the document and put it on the screen, Mr. President.
The President, yes, you can proceed.
Donc, ma question était de savoir pourquoi
So my question was to know why there were widespread arrests of people in July 76.
Response. Based on my statement that I made then, large-scale arrest here, which means that it's nationwide, not just only at B1.
Oui, j'entends bien, d'accord.
In B1 and nationwide. But can you give us some idea of why these widespread arrests were taking place, please?
Response. I do not know the reason for the arrest. However, the situation at that time was that the Vietnamese intensified their attack toward Phnom Penh.
Et quelles étaient les conséquences de cette attaque?
What were the consequences of the Vietnamese attack at that time? Are you telling us that the arrests were connected with the attack by the Vietnamese?
Response. I do not know everything in details. I only knew certain portions of the events. I learned from the military who came from the border that the Vietnamese were advancing, and then there were fierce attacks at the border. That's all what I knew back then.
Est-ce qu'on recherchait des espions vietnamiens?
In those days, were they looking for Vietnamese spies in the different ministries?
Response. I stated yesterday that was not my skill or expertise. My work was involved in educating the people to calm and to be vigilant.
Merci.
Thank you. At one of the ministry meetings that you attended, did you ever hear Ieng Sari saying that the country was being betrayed to the tune of 1 to 5%, and that meant that you had to look very meticulously at biographies and at the results of the self-examination meetings. Did you ever hear that said?
Response. I cannot recall these words. In general, I can recall that we had to be vigilant to the highest level. And as for our internal affairs, we have to compromise ourselves and not to stray away from our patriotism. That's all what I can recall.
Être ultra vigilant dans la section de sécurité.
Being ultra vigilant in the security office of B1,
Cela voulait dire découvrir les
did that signify discovering the enemies who were gnawing away from within?
Response. It is difficult for me to respond to this question.
វាត្រូវតែរកខ្មាំង
Enemies had to be discovered. And what were those enemies? Are we referring to our internal or self enemies? If we can find our self or internal enemy, then we can find any enemy.
Vous souvenez-vous, monsieur le témoin, d'un épisode
Witness, do you remember an episode where two young women were found carrying out treasonous activities in the ministry? I'm still basing myself on the document that I couldn't show, Mr. President.
Response. I cannot recall that event.
Est-ce que vous avez entendu
At General Assemblies or at self-examination meetings, did you ever hear Yang Sari saying that you had to be doubly vigilant vis-à-vis people who've had degrees and diplomas?
Response. There were no such words.
est-ce qu'à ce type de réunion,
At that sort of meeting, was it ever said that within the intellectual section there was a shortage of people from the peasant or workers category so as to balance the section better?
គាត់ខ្ញុំអត់ចាំទេ
Response. I cannot exactly recall, but I heard that in the future we had to teach the children of the poor peasants how to work like the intellectuals.
est-ce que vous connaissez le camarade
Did you know Comrade Meun, M-O-E-U-N, Meun, who worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
ភេទអី
Respond. Was he a male or was the person a male or female?
សមត្ថមិត្តមឿនដែលលោកនេះ
Comrade Moon that you referred to, was the person male or female?
Je ne connais pas le sexe de cette personne, mais
I don't know what gender that person was, but it was a cadre in the ministry. If you can remember the various cadres, can you possibly recall somebody whose name was Moon?
លោកអត់ស្គាល់ភេទខ្ញុំក៏មិនបាច់ឆ្លើយបានដែរ
Response. Since you do not know the gender of the person, I do not need to respond.
Est-ce que, monsieur le témoin, lors des réunions d'introspection,
At self-criticism meetings, witness, is there somebody who had to take notes on what the different cadres were saying when they were criticizing themselves, and who recorded the conclusions drawn by Yang Sari at the end of the meeting? As you said yesterday, were notes taken?
Response. There were some minutes of some meetings, but not all. If the meetings were important, yes, there were minutes of the meetings.
qui était chargé d'écrire ces comptes rendus en général?
Who wrote the minutes, normally speaking, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for these self-criticism meetings?
អត់មានកំណត់នរណាមួយទេ
Response. Nobody specifically assigns to take minutes.
ហើយទុកដាក់ខ្លួនគេទៅ
People took minutes individually and they kept it by themselves.
Mais vous venez de me dire
But you told me that there were records of some of these meetings. I mean, records that could then have been shared with the different participants in the meetings. Were there records of the meetings that were typewritten, for example?
ពាក្យថា
Response.
ប្រជុំធំធំ
The word major meetings, for example, the meetings abroad or the speeches,
ស្រុកផ្នែកបរទេសគេកត់
then the foreign section of the ministry would take the minutes.
ឯផ្នែកខ្ញុំណែ
As for my section, regarding the livelihood, no, there was no minutes of the meetings.
est-ce qu'il a jamais été dit lors des assemblées générales
At the General Assemblies or at the big meetings that you referred to, were there ever cadres who reported that the population was hungry, that famine was raging?
ធ្លាប់មាន
Response, yes.
ខ្ញុំជាដើម
For example, myself.
À quelle période cela a-t-il été
When
première fois
was it first reported?
រាយការណ៍
Response.
ប្រហែលជាមួយខែឬ3អាទិត្យ
It was reported
ពេលវៀតណាមចូល
about 3 weeks or 1 month before the Vietnamese arrival in the country.
Je ne sais pas si je peux dire ça, monsieur le président.
Well, Mr. President, I don't know if I can say this, but in the document that could not be presented, there was reference to as of 1976. At that time, did you hear officials talking about such things, and not only in 1978?
Est-ce que vous avez compris la question, monsieur le témoin?
Witness, did you understand the question?
សុំម្ដងទៀត
Est-ce que un ou plusieurs cadres
In 1976, when there were meetings held in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, did one or several of the cadres express the concern that the population had nothing to eat? Did you hear that said in 1976 and not, as you suggested just now, towards September or October 1978?
បញ្ហានេះការអត់ឃ្លាន
Response. Regarding starvation, in general, starvation existed during the wartime.
ការដែលមិនអនុវត្តនយោបាយរបស់បក
However, the failure to implement the party's policies in certain areas, people were starved.
ផ្នែកមូលដ្ឋានគេរាយការណ៍
The bases would then report
ខ្ញុំរាយការណ៍
regarding the starvation, and as per for me, when I went outside the ministry and I saw the events, the starvation, then I made a report, as I stated earlier.
Thank you, witness. Did you often yourself go out to the rural areas in democratic Cambodia between April 1975 and 1979? If so, when? Could you tell us when you went out to the countryside?
Response.
ខ្ញុំមិនមានទេពេលនោះ
If you use the word visit, I do not have any visit at the time.
បានជួនភ្ញៀវ
But sometimes I accompanied guests,
ខ្សែឯនឹង
for example, journalists,
ដល់ទៅប្រជាជនចេះតែមកប្រាប់ខ្ញុំ
and I was told by the local people that the local cadres mistreated them. That happened in certain areas, and sometimes they complained about the shortage of food. So then I reported on these events.
À partir de quelle année avez-vous accompagné les délégations?
As of which year did you go with these foreign delegations that were visiting the country?
Et donc, peut-être voyager à l'intérieur du pays. À partir de quelle année sous le régime
And in which context you travelled yourself within the country? Tell us what year that started.
ខ្ញុំមិនចាំ
Response.
តើខ្ញុំប្រមាណដងប្រមាណ
I cannot recall the numbers of trips.
មិនក៏មានពីរដងដែរ
However, at least there were 2 trips per year that I escorted guests.
Donc deux par année, vous étiez
So, 2 trips a year from 1975 or from a later date?
ចាប់តាំងពី
Response.
មានយើងមក
It started when
ចូលមក
guests
តាំងនៅស្រុកជា
arrived in Cambodia, including those diplomats.
Est-ce que vous avez accompagné des délégations étrangères?
Did you accompany foreign delegations from China around the country? And if so, at what sort of time?
ខ្ញុំ
Response.
អត់មានដែលបានជូនប្រតិភូចិនទេ
I never escorted a Chinese delegation. However, I escorted other delegations.
Pouvez-vous nous donner la nationalité
Could you tell us the nationality then of the delegations that you did escort during the Democratic Kampuchea period? Not every single one, but give us the names of some of the nationalities of these delegations, please.
ខ្សែ
Response.
ខ្សែអាមេរិក
I escorted journalists from the United States, journalists from Japan,
អាស្កា
and NASCA, that was the name.
ខ្សែអាមេរិកខ្ញុំស្គាល់ឈ្មោះទេ
And I cannot recall the name of the newspaper or the journalist from the United States.
Est-ce que vous avez aussi accompagné une délégation?
Did you escort a Belgian delegation from the Belgium-Cambodia Friendship Association?
បាទខ្ញុំបាន
Response: Yes, I did.
Est-ce qu'à cette occasion, à la fin
And
des visites,
at the end of these visits, did you go with them to K1 for meetings with Pol Pot?
ខ្ញុំចាំអត់បានបាទ
Response: I cannot recall that.
est-ce que vous avez accompagné aussi
Did you also escort a delegation from Laos that visited the country in 1977, if my memory serves me correctly?
ខ្ញុំអត់បានជូនទេ
Response: No, I did not.
ទេដូចខ្ញុំបានជូនដែរបាទ
Hold on. I recall that, yes, I escorted them to Kampong Sao at the time.
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais simplement montrer
Mr. President, I'd like to show a few photographs which could help us. It's a new document which we placed in the file last April. The first is P00513612. Perhaps all three could be shown at the same time to the witness. The second is P00513592. And the third is P00513420. I'd like your permission, Mr. President, to project these on the screen and to show hard copies to the witness.
President: Yes, you can proceed. Court officer, can you take the document from the prosecution and show them to the witness? The photos can also be shown on the screen.
Alors, je vais commencer par la première photo. Si vous prenez, monsieur le témoin, la photo
Starting with the first one, Mr. President, if I may, 00513612. It's on the screen. Can you tell us who you can recognize on this photograph? Let us start with the right-hand side.
Response: It is likely that the gentleman is Ieng Sari,
នៅខាងក្រោយគេនោះ
that is far at the back, and the third from him is Noon Chi and then Kieu Sampon. That's all I can say.
ច្បាស់ហើយនឹងប្រហែល
est-ce que vous vous reconnaissez sur cette photo également?
Can you see yourself in the photograph as well?
It seems that there is no photo of me in there, because I was the one who prepared the food, the lunch, so I did not have the opportunity to be with them.
Qui est ce grand, élégant jeune homme?
Who is the tall, elegant young man furthest to the right, whose body is sliced in half, unfortunately, by the photograph? Do you recognize that person?
ខ្ញុំដូចមិនស្គាល់ទេ
Response, I do not recognize this gentleman. He looks handsome, but I do not recognize him.
Alors peut-être la deuxième photo.
Very well. Perhaps we can turn to the second photograph and tell us where it might have been taken. This is 00513592. Please look at the people coming down the steps. Do you recognize anybody here from the Cambodian government and anybody in the foreign delegation that was visiting?
For this Laos delegation, I cannot recall the name of the person, and besides, I only know Kieu Sampon. And then behind, I am not sure. I cannot say for sure who the person is.
Savez-vous où la photo a pu être prise?
Do you know where the photo was taken? It's a foreign delegation. What sort of place might it be when you look at this photograph?
Response, I am not really sure. My duty was to prepare the food for them after the plane landed.
Peut-être simplement, mais très rapidement, la troisième photo.
All right, let's quickly have a look at the third photo,
Les mêmes personnages, il me semble.
taken with the same people, I believe, is 00513420, P. If we could have that one up on the screen. Do you recognize this place where this official photo was taken? It looks like a rather large edifice.
Response, if I am not mistaken, this photo was taken at the so-called house number 1.
Est-ce qu'il s'agit toujours bien de la visite de la délégation laotienne?
Is this still the visit by the delegation of Laos? Do you recognize members of the government or Democratic Kampuchea cadres in the photograph?
I do not know the Laos delegation. And in this picture, I can identify Brother Ian Sari, Brother Kirsampon. I'm not sure about the others. I do not know who they are. But another one, the lady over there, Ieng Tirit and Junjat. But I do not know the other woman on the left.
La personne qui est à côté de la troisième femme.
The person next to the third woman on that photograph, is that you?
He was probably a servant. He's not me.
Un serviteur sur une photo officielle, monsieur le témoin.
A servant on an official photograph, witness? Are you sure?
At that time, I believe that everyone was, or who were working there, were called together, but it's hard for me to explain this. At the time, everything was equal. Those who were responsible or in charge of security could not go there, could not stand there. And as for me, who was in charge of security, could not go there. But if the delegation say, well, servants could come and stand together and take a picture, yes, they could come. This is different from the European culture.
Si.
Thank you. Regarding that Laotian delegation that visited Cambodia, did Mr. Ieng Sari accompany them on the ground? Did they go to Siem Reap? And more generally speaking, do you know whether Mr. Ieng Sari sometimes accompanied major delegations or important delegations on visits to the ground in Cambodia?
The President, a witness, please hold. Yes, Michael Kanavas, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, Your Honors. Last week we saw vigorous objections coming from the prosecution and from the civil parties where there were compound questions. This is a three-part question, particularly the last part. If we're going to keep a clean record and we know exactly what the witness is answering to, part one, part two, or part three of the question, I suggest that we break it down into simple one fact per question. Thank you.
Yes, the International Court Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Merci, oui, c'est une bonne idée.
Thank you. That is a good idea. I thought we were getting closer and closer to the break time. Let me repeat my question. Did you go to Siem Reap with the delegation from Laos, and was Mr. Ieng Sari there as well?
I do not remember that, and I did not accompany these delegations to Siem Reap province.
Pardon, vous aviez dit effectivement.
I'm sorry, you indeed said Kampong Som. You did refer to Kampong Som. So when you went to Kampong Som, was Mr. Ieng Sari with you?
I do not remember about that either.
Alors j'en viens à une question plus générale.
Now let me put a more general question to you. Did Mr. Ieng Sari happen to accompany important delegations, particularly when there were ministers and foreign heads of states visiting Cambodia and going to the field between April 1975 and January 1979?
The President, please wait until your mic is activated, witness. Witness. As his role was to receive guests, it would be true that he would receive delegations, but I could not recall the exact date.
Mais il recevait des délégations.
He did indeed receive delegations, I agree with you, but did he accompany them on visits to the ground, to the field?
ទេ
I do not remember that. He went to the base, but I do not remember when.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vois
Thank you, Mr. President. I see that the time now is 10:40. Is this the right time to take our break?
ឱកាសសម្រាប់
The President, it is now appropriate for us to take a break. The chamber will now go into recess for 20 minutes. The court officer is instructed to facilitate and bring the witness back to his waiting room and to return him to this courtroom along with his duty counsel at 11 o'clock. Yes, defense counsel for Mr. Insari, you may proceed. Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Due to his health reason, Mr. Insari finds it difficult to sit in this courtroom, and he would like to waive his rights to be present in this courtroom directly, but to follow the proceedings from the holding cell downstairs, and we seek your consideration accordingly. The President, thank you. You may be seated. After having heard the request of Mr. Insari made through his counsels to waive his rights to be present directly in this courtroom, and to request to follow the proceedings through audiovisual means from the holding cell for the remainder of today's proceedings, the chamber grants the request of Mr. Insari that have been made through his counsel not to be present directly in this courtroom, but instead to follow the proceeding from a holding cell downstairs. For the remainder of today's proceedings, defense counsel is required to submit a written waiver with a signature or thumbprint of Mr. Insari. The AV unit is now instructed to live the proceedings to the holding cell downstairs. Security guards are now instructed to bring Mr. Insari to the holding cell downstairs, where equipment are ready for him to follow the proceedings. The court is now adjourned.
Soom ជើងក្រោកចូល
All rise.